and Eliza couldn't claim to have met either one, though she'd studied them plenty in her work at the library. A sudden heaviness rooted her feet to the ground. Her parents would be inside. Eliza's lips drew thin. Even now that Grandmama had passed and could no longer influence Eliza with her peculiar ways and nonsense tales, as they referred to them, they wouldn't let her be alone with Grandmama, or her spirit, or whatever remained in Folly Hall. "I'm sorry, Grandmama," Eliza whispered, closing her eyes against the sting of tears at their corners. "I should have come sooner." But she hadn't. Her letters never said she was ill. Still, that was no excuse. Eliza shook her head and squared her shoulders. She might have been a horrible granddaughter, staying away so long, but the past was unchangeable, and no amount of wallowing in it on the drive would help matters. The knot in her throat grew thicker with every step, but Eliza forced herself across the short length of the drive and up the half-dozen steps to the front porch. She reached a hand toward the door when a servant pushed it open wide, sending her stumbling back a step. Servants. She gave her head a little shake. Eliza had forgotten what that was like. Years of boarding school, followed by study at university, and finally her life as a scholar at the great library in the Gomorian capital, afforded little waiting on and much hard work. But she preferred it that way. It was much better than life under constant scrutiny, clawing after every morsel of praise and acclaim one could add to their name. Some of her colleagues couldn't quite understand why she didn't want an easy life, following in her parents' footsteps and being a darling of society. But only someone who'd never suffered it would call it easy. "Miss Eliza." The butler inclined his head where he held open the door. "How you have grown." She forced a smile for his benefit. "Thank you." Blast it. She couldn't remember his name, though his features were vaguely familiar. The staff had always been kind to her when she stayed here with Grandmama, but it had been so long. "Albert." "Albert," she repeated. "My apologies. It has been a long journey." He ushered her inside. "And quite a long time." She couldn't miss the note of condemnation there. Eliza barely stifled a wince. A long time indeed. And while her parents deserved her cold shoulder, Grandmama hadn't, not even if she'd been a bit strange and absent-minded. "They're waiting for you in the parlour." Albert led her through the wood-panelled walls of the hallway. Portraits of former mistresses of Folly Hall hung on the wall, their varied gazes staring at anyone who ventured down the crimson-carpeted walk. Eliza hated the hall as a child, and that sentiment certainly hadn't changed. Other servants passed by carrying vases of flowers. One held a long cloth with gold stitching. No doubt they were setting up for the gathering of remembrance to be held the next day, though the decorations were a bit bright for such a sombre affair. Albert knocked once on the parlour door before opening it. Eliza's breath hitched as she took in the small gathering inside. Her parents, she expected, though it'd be a lie to say she was ever quite prepared enough to see them. However, an unfamiliar, spectacled man sat on the sofa, his face creased with consternation. "Ah, there she is!" Mamma set aside her tea and nearly leaped to her feet as if she were actually thrilled to see her daughter. A crimson dress hugged her form, entirely out of place for the reason they were there. So were the styled brown ringlets in her hair and the makeup on her face. Papa and the stranger both could have stepped out of a business meeting, given their tailored coats and styled accents. Only Eliza dressed appropriately, in a dress of navy blue, a grey shawl around her shoulders to fight off the chill. Eliza barely managed a stiff "Mama" before the woman gathered her in a loose hug and placed a kiss upon her cheek. "It's been so long, my dear." She held tight to Eliza's upper arms, looking